Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and may I introduce to you the Wrestling Connection podcast. This is something that Glenn and Chris have put together. They're from Scotland, but this is a universal theme. Their podcast is about how wrestling connects people, and it really does. Man, there is this almost inexplicable connection, like between parents and children, even children who don't normally get along with their parents. They like to watch wrestling together. Fathers and sons who can't stand each other some of the time, only because kid's a teenager and that's normal for teenagers. But they love to get together. This wrestling thing that some people don't understand is a really beautiful way to connect. And now that I've watched 5 seasons of Outlander, I feel like an honorary Scot. I actually recommended Drew McIntyre to the executive producer of that show, who follows me on Twitter. She said she was not aware of Drew, but now he is on her radar. So wouldn't that be something cool if Drew McIntyre, a beloved Scotsman, showed up on a beloved show about Scots people? I think that'd be pretty cool. Anyway, thanks so much for being big fans. I really hope this podcast of yours takes off. It sounds like a great concept. Sounds like a really positive way to share the wrestling love. Have a nice day.
Hi everybody, welcome to another new episode this week. You're listening to the Wrestling Connection. My name is Chris and this is my tag team partner Glenn. Glenn, it's been another lovely day today in the old Scotland.
The old Scotland.
The old Scotland.
It's like how Vince McMahon talks about Scotland, like when he was making the Highlanders a thing. Thank God we have Drew McIntyre now, that's all I can say.
I know the Highlanders was the only representation of real Scottish wrestlers that wore kilts because of Piper.
Oh my God, I used to always find it hilarious because back around that time, not around, that's a lie because it was 2006, but not long after that, when I grew up a bit, one of my first ever landlords when I first left home was called Rory McAllister, and that was one of the Highlanders.
Oh, you're like, excuse me, thanks for letting us move in, but were you one of the Highlanders? Do you remember when one of them was in the audience at TNA and they got like so much heat because of it?
No, that's why they got, that's what ended them, was that. And then how things have changed, where Britt Baker can be in like the front row for NXT, and that blew my mind. And of course, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, nobody's gaining anything or losing anything from that. But yeah, it was a stupid thing for him to do at the time. But it's also hilarious. The look in his face where it cuts him.
He's so bored. But like, the issue is, he's a wrestler. Imagine a wrestler wanting to go and watch wrestling. Do you know what I mean? But it was just the fact that they put him on TV. That is pettiness from TNA, I thought. I didn't think... I mean, first of all, WWE didn't need to sack him, but they didn't need to shoot him. Do you know what I mean? I guess if you're the rival company, you would do, but I don't know. What do I know?
I know. I mean, it's not as if, like, John Cena was sitting in the front row.
Exactly.
Like he did at WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah.
But, this has happened a few times.
In the Impact Zone.
We've got obviously the Britt Baker stuff. Paige at Slammiversary or Bound for Glory, whenever it was a few years ago, was in the front row wearing a mask, admittedly. But it's just one of these things. I think WWE are less. They're certainly not fussed about Impact anymore. Like they don't care about that anymore. And Impact isn't as prominent as it once was. But you do hear like regularly stories about copyright claims for certain terms, like when AEW were using Bash at the Beach. Apparently, that was ruffling feathers. But it's funny how things have changed. John Cena could probably do a run in at an Impact show and WWE wouldn't bat an eyelid now.
They wouldn't even care. But the Britt Baker stuff as well. So there was 2 incidents with Britt Baker. One was when the cameras were like showing Stephanie McMahon. And they were like, oh, Stephanie McMahon, she's here to see the talent for this year or whatever. And Britt Baker's just like the row behind her. And she must be like looking like the other direction. But the way it's shot, it looks like she's giving Steph like the devil eyes. And like that was like a meme, like Britt Baker coming after Steph's job or something. And then obviously the other one was when Gargano, or was it Ciampa, one of the two, they did that big move to Adam Cole off the top of the cage. And then like it literally cut to her face. Like it wasn't as if like it was subtle or anything. It was literally right to Britt Baker, obviously looking concerned the fact that boyfriend nearly died. But but then like obviously backstage like, oh, we didn't know it was you. We didn't know it was you. So I don't know. I don't trust that.
But good on Marrow for just calling it out when it happened.
Oh,
there's
yes,
Britt Baker. Called her by the name Britt Baker.
Yeah.
Is that her actual name?
I don't know, but I hope so.
I mean, I don't think she's really a doctor.
She is a doctor. I don't think otherwise. No,
okay.
Honestly, Britt Baker has turned it around. My God, at first I was like, ugh, she was going to be like the new kind of, we're shoving, this character down your throat babyface. And I feel like they kind of got that, and people were kind of moaning about that, and they just like, they made a change to it immediately, and they switched her. Now she's like one of the most entertaining things on TV. So
yeah, to the extent that I was gutted when she had to pull out of Double or Nothing this past month. It was a shame, but you just know that I think she's a real. It's realistic that she could be one of the absolute mainstays of their women's division in the months and years to come. She really is something else. Wait, how did we get to Britt Baker?
I don't know. that's the beauty.
Because we're talking about that. It's because you introduced the pod and you said that about Scotland. Then we got to the Highlanders. Okay.
Britt Baker, Scotland, that whole connection there. It's been another long week. It's been another fun week in terms of watching wrestling. Have you been watching anything of interest this week?
This has been one of the most representative and comprehensive weeks for me because I've been watching a fair bit of AEW this week. I've kind of decided, Chris, that like with lockdown and and having to work from home with schools being shut, I'm gonna start trying to watch NXT and AEW weekly because we get those fairly soon after broadcast on streaming services for free in the UK. Yeah, and so I've decided to start doing that again, and I think AEW particularly are doing such a good job with dealing with not being able to run shows in front of a big audience, and it's good that more recently WWE have kind of started to take a page from their book and having like talent and filling out the audience and things like that.
I can't believe it took them this long though.
I know. I wonder if it was like a pride thing, but it seems to me that as soon as you could determine that it was safe to do so. And it was within regulations and things like that. Pardon me, it seemed like a real no-brainer to do it. And I'm glad they're doing it now because I think it does make a big difference. But apart from your like AEW things like that, I'm still on my 2002 run, and right now I'm in the build-up to a show which I am sure we're going to talk about in detail today, and that's SummerSlam 2002. But one thing that I hadn't realized that it was at this point in 2002, where just before SummerSlam, the WWE made a quick tour of Australia, also known as the Global Warning Tour. And I wonder how familiar you are. Did you ever have the DVD that came out in the UK for it?
I had the video.
Yeah, nice one. Me too. I think I got it for Christmas one year from one of my aunties. And so I was kind of like, I had Raw and SmackDowns and stuff playing in the background as I was working, and then I thought, wait a minute, they've just said that they were in Australia this past weekend. That must be where that fits in. So I found they've put it onto the network, so I was watching that, and all I'll say is I had it on like whilst I was exercising, like on an exercise bike, right. And I got so like, I'm going to first of all say that I love the duo of Michael Cole and Taz.
Yeah,
but it's really obvious when you watch it, and I think I was aware of this at the time on the DVD, that there was no commentators there that night, and so they've recorded the commentary in post-production, like old-fashioned style, and they're clearly not being produced in the same way that they would have done for SmackDowns by Heyman or by Vince McMahon or whoever it would have been over the years, and as a result, it's an effing shambles. Their commentary, like they go off on these ridiculous tangents, and they're talking about the difference between a koala and a panda, whilst Chris Jericho and Edge are tearing the house down. Right. And they're having pops at Tony Chimmel and stuff like that. Like, how do you let him through customs? It's utter madness. But the show is fine, But what's brilliant is the cutaways that you get between matches of like Kurt Angle in the zoo hanging out with a koala.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's a relic of its own time. It is not on any of my recommendations, but it has a curious main event: Lesnar, The Rock, and Triple H.
It's a good main event, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good one. a ridiculously long ramp at the Colonial Stadium in Melbourne, Australia. Like, the entrances take so long. You can tell that the announcers are getting sick of it, because at one point Michael Cole's like, "Could Chris Jericho take any longer to get to the ring?" Like, you didn't build the ramp.
I know. Did you mention? So you mentioned about like the daft commentary with like Taz and Michael Cole. Did you ever watch any of the TNA pay-per-views around like 2014 called One Night Only?
No, I was aware of them, but I never did watch them. That was their kind of shorter pay-per-views, cheaper ones,
kind of like in your house sort of thing. Yeah. And they were on for free. All TNA pay-per-views have always been on for free here in the UK, so we're very lucky. And I can't ever imagine myself buying a pay-per-view that there's no context to it whatsoever, and it doesn't matter about the storylines that are going on. It's just a random show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't follow up in storylines. Heels can team with faces and all that stuff. It's just daft matches, right? But they somehow signed a pay-per-view deal with a company. They had to produce these pay-per-views and just put on these daft ones called One Night Only. And I remember specifically watching them for Mike Tenay and Taz's commentary, because they clearly didn't care. They knew no one was watching. They knew it wasn't on TV. Some of the stuff they would do or say was just so funny. And I remember like actively looking forward to the pay-per-views, not to watch the matches, but to listen to their commentary. Like, they'd just laugh like out loud and like take shots at Errol Hebner being old and Bully Ray being heavy and all that. I mean, it was just hilarious stuff. And I think I've got some of them on DVD when I was burning my DVDs and my shows back in the day. So I need to go and look some of them out just to listen to the soundtrack to them, because they were so funny and just like they just didn't care, and that kind of made it more fun for us to watch.
Well, folks, if you're wondering how important it is to be well produced as a commentator, that voice in the headset, compare Michael Cole and Taz on any episode of SmackDown to the Global Warning Tour, and you will see just how ridiculous they can be together when they're not supervised. They're like two little boys with the giggles. I think they might be drunk when they're doing it.
It's nice they're having fun, though, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. What have you been watching this week?
I've been continuing on with some 2007 pay-per-views, like I've been saying the past few weeks. However, a couple of episodes ago, I mentioned that 2007 isn't the strongest of years. I would like to retract that comment and take that back. It is, I believe it was a period of time they were going through, a transitional time, just right before SummerSlam. Call it from Backlash to kind of SummerSlam time, and all the shows were kind of slower and weren't as interesting, and the finishes were a bit daft. But see, once you got to SummerSlam, I've been watching these, just, as you say, just on in the background, skimming through them, that sort of thing, trying to like sort of refresh my memory of that time of me being younger watching these shows. And really, I mean, from SummerSlam, Unforgiven, No Mercy, Cyber Sunday, and now on to what I watched this week, which was Survivor Series. They've been really, really good, really fun. People seem to be making more of an effort to make the pay-per-views feel special, and I think that's important. Like, I was thinking back in like watching Backlash and Judgment Day and stuff earlier in the year, and it seems like JBL just can't be bothered being there, or the fact that the ECW commentators are only calling one match, it kind of shows that they're annoyed about it. Whereas like these later pay-per-views, it's almost like someone's had a word with them and went, let's try and make it feel a bit more special, you know? And obviously that's just my assumption, you know? I'm assuming like people really did try and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that, but it's just a different feeling, you know?
Yeah, and I suppose they didn't have much of a choice, you know, with everything that was happening in the industry at that time. And it was also that year that they stopped having brand exclusive pay-per-views, so far as I'm aware. That's when they started bringing in like
the tri-branded pay-per-views, as they keep saying.
Tri-branded.
Everything's stay branded.
So yeah, that's good. That's good. You do realize though that we've been yapping for however long it's been. We haven't mentioned the fact that we had a very special introduction to this podcast this week.
That's right. By the way,
it's almost as if you're not having a nice day.
Did you hear Mick at the start there?
You may have heard of him.
Yeah, so thank you to the hardcore legend, ladies and gentlemen. WWE Hall of Famer, one of the GOATs in the wrestling business, Mick Foley, giving us a wee shout out, a wee welcome, a wee introduction, if you will, this week to the Wrestling Connection. So we are very, very grateful to Mick. What a guy. What a guy.
I could spend an entire episode saying good things about Mick Foley. And, you know, full disclosure, when we reach out to these wrestlers, we use agencies and we try and find ways of getting in touch with them. And the request is really just the bare minimum. You know, we're a big fan. Would you be up for doing an introduction for our podcast? This is what we're all about. So really, all they need to do is go, "Hi, I'm Mick Foley, and this is the Wrestling Connection," or sorry, then Wrestling Connection. But he deliberately just decided to go above and beyond, and he spoke for quite a while. And I'm, and I'm not surprised, but it's not something I wanted to just assume or take for granted either. But he's just that kind of guy, I don't think there's a bad thing to say about Mick Foley unless you're Ric Flair in his 2004 autobiography. He seems to be just universally adored. And a friend of a show, my good friend Jamie Sweeney, who does the artwork for our show, Mick Foley's his favorite wrestler of all time, and it's not hard to see why.
Yeah. I love the fact that like the video that he sent us though, or the sound clip he sent us, it is a video, so you can see it on our social media accounts, which is at WrestleConnection on Instagram, by the way, and at WrestleConnect1 on Twitter. I think it's really cool that the video that he sent is like him actually like talking to us as if he's sending us a video message. It's not just we've said to him in the message, okay, we're going to do this thing for the podcast, but he's not just made it just that, as you say, he's kind of sent us a wee message, he sent us a video literally talking to us, which I think is like the best way to do these celebrity video things, because you can be cheap and you can do those sort of like one-liners and people can go home happy. But those who go above and beyond and make a bit more of an effort really goes a long way, I think.
Yeah, and just because we're just fans,
Yeah.
It's still mental when you think about, the fact, the coach or Santino or Chavito, you think about these people, and then Mick, it's mental to think that they're talking about our show and our podcast, and it means a great deal. It really does. I would almost say, Chris, that I'm thankful.
Well, what I would. I was about to ask
you
a question.
We don't need to go there, but why don't you ask me a question then?
I was going to ask you a question, which was, have you ever met Mick Foley?
I'm glad. I'm thankful that you asked, Chris. Okay. That was a red herring on my part. We're now going to transition into Meet a Wrestler cue jingle.
Meet a wrestler, we've met a wrestler in the flesh.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, so Chris, you ask, have I ever met Mick Foley? The answer to that would be yes, I have met Mick Foley.
Oh, thank God, we didn't play the jingle for nothing.
I know. I mean, and fun fact, those jingles are performed live every single week. We do not have a recording of them. I have my wife and 4 clones doing all the harmonies right here.
Via satellite.
Via satellite, indeed, like The Rock for most of the naughties. So, so this happened in 2012. I've always been a Mick Foley fan. My first exposure to him would have been in the WWF Warzone game, where you could play as all 3 faces of Foley eventually, if you unlock them all. And
which, by the way, can I just say, after doing some research on Warzone last week and watching the Ahmed Johnson video, comparing it to your impression of Ahmed Johnson last week was something to behold.
Wow. I mean, I didn't know that it would tickle you so much. So if you haven't heard the podcast from a couple of weeks ago, folks, wrestling video games, give it a listen. It's the Ahmed Johnson impression came out of nowhere. It comes from a loving place and nothing but respect for Ahmed, who, much like Scott Steiner and Psycho Sid and the Ultimate Warrior, they sound absolutely bonkers. So,
yeah.
Sadly, I have not met I've not met Ahmed Johnson, but they're still.
Oh man, that would be a story though.
See if he could cut a promo for us. Introducing the pod. Right. Well, I'm going to have to look into this. If anyone out there knows how to get in touch with Ahmed Johnson,
let's try to track him down. We'll get him to do a Wrestle Connection intro, and then he'll just go, la, 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 puppy dog.
The jingle that you played at the end of that podcast is brilliant. It's like, because I'm in a very bad mood today, and I haven't taken my medication.
It's like Jerry Lawler.
So Mick Foley,
anyway,
so and I fell in love with like his work, not just the stuff on telly, but his books from quite a young age. And then I went through a phase. I bring up my friend Jamie again for a reason, because he was there with me that day. Where I would read his books and then I would share them with Jamie, and Jamie and I kind of like shared wrestling books in it for many years. It was like a like a thing that we get each other a wrestling book at a Christmas or a birthday. So most of my wrestling library comes from him nowadays. And I think vice versa as well. I certainly sent him a few Mick Foley books over the years as gifts. And he got Have a Nice Day hardback signed that night as well from Mick Foley.
Nice.
So we decided we'd go together. Mick Foley is a stand-up comedian as well, and it just makes perfect sense because he was one of the funniest wrestlers, and it's some part of his career which should never be overlooked as much. And that's one thing I love about Mick Foley is his versatility. He's so brutal and can be so dark. He can get it done in the ring, but he's also just a loving, lovable character, depending on what mood you catch him in. So he was doing his stand-up tour, and I think this was his second time ever coming to Glasgow with his stand-up tour. And he was doing a show at the Classic Grand. It was in February of 2012. It was my 21st birthday gift from my dad was tickets to this show. And we bought the meet and greet tickets so we could get into the show and obviously meet Mick as well. So the meet and greet was before the show, and so I brought with me my copy of the Hardcore Diaries, which is, I think, probably it's a toss up between that and Have a Nice Day, but it's a very underrated book, as I think we said last week or the week before. And like we've said a few times, there's always something so special about being in the queue and then just getting your first glimpse of the wrestler that you're queuing to meet for the first time, and just seeing them sitting in their seat or standing in front of a backdrop or doing whatever they're doing, but seeing them in the flesh for the first time was really, really cool.
So was the signing before the show?
It was before the show, yeah.
Right, okay. So you saw him first and then you saw the show. So it's like, wasn't that like starstruck sort of thing where you're seeing someone on stage and then going up to them? I think that's really nerve-wracking.
Absolutely. Do you know, I tell you what, you know how we went to that Inside the Ropes JR show a few months back? That's right. That the room that was in, like, that wasn't where that show was supposed to be originally. The JR one, they had Inside the Ropes had to move that show to that smaller bit, which is why it was a wee bit cramped, because there's a bigger venue space in Classic Grand, as you'll know. And that bit, pretty much where you and I were standing when you came over to talk to me and Robert, that's where that guy collapsed. That's where Mick was sat, right there.
Okay.
And so we queued up to get into there, and he was sitting there, and there was people selling merch and stuff, so he had nothing to get signed. You could buy an 8x10 or a book or something. And he was sitting there with Mr. Socko in one hand and a pen in the other the whole time. And you know the way it is in these things, you never get a lot of time, and sometimes you're just whizzed past them. You're whizzed through the wrestlers quickly, and it's understandable. Yeah. It's a lot of fans to get through. But at Mick Foley's, he was sat at a desk, and the rule was you would just walk right up to the table and you would take a seat next to him. You would sit next to him and chat to him for a few seconds and get your picture taken. And it was lovely because it was right after his Royal Rumble appearance when him and Santino had the Socko versus Cobra thing. You know, it was right after that. Yeah. So it felt cool because he was fresh off a significant appearance. I think that may have been one of his last ever matches.
Come
to think about it.
Maybe his last match. Yeah.
May have been, actually. And, you know, I sat down and as I've said a few times to anyone who's never heard us talk about meeting wrestlers before, most of my encounters with wrestlers are profoundly embarrassing. I am a disaster when I'm nervous. But this one actually went okay. I don't know what it was. Right. Maybe Jamie and I had been for a beer the night before, or maybe in the hours beforehand, and maybe my nerves were a bit eased. But I sat next to him and I just said, I brought this book to get signed from you because it's probably my favorite book that you've ever read. I've not read your new one yet because Countdown to Lockdown had just come out at this point.
Right,
but I love this book. And he went, yeah, I love it. I mean, I think it's important because it doesn't have a happy ending. And, you know, I'm very proud of that one. And he was just really warm and welcoming. I felt like it's such a cliche, but I genuinely felt like I was talking to a mate. And I think that's just how sound a guy Mick Foley is.
Yeah.
And then we posed and we leant right into each other, and he held up Mr. Socko. And I still have it, a picture of me, age 21, with a ridiculous, like, Justin Bieber style haircut.
Yes.
Like it was like a kind of Beatles mop top, which I'm slowly growing back in this lockdown.
I can attest that around that time, 2012, 2011, that was in style. I had one too, and everybody did, so it was fine.
You did, because the day we first met, we were both rocking it, and that was in 2012.
That's right.
A few months before that.
You need to post the picture so folk can see.
Oh, dude, yeah, I found the picture just the other day, so I'll post it. And my good friend Jamie met Mick just after me, and took a picture too. And Jamie, I think, got his "Have a Nice Day" signed. And here's the fun thing: it was like one autograph per person, unless you paid for an extra autograph.
Right.
Jamie bought the Cactus Jack Wanted Dead T-shirt at the stalls just because he wanted it, because it's such an iconic T-shirt. And Jamie got his "Have a Nice Day" signed, and I don't think Jamie wanted the T-shirt signed because he wanted to wear it a lot and be able to wash it.
Yeah.
And I think as they were gabbing, Mick just grabbed the T-shirt and signed it anyway. So then Jamie could never wear it because he'd have to wash it. And I think the only time he wore it was at our WrestleMania 28 flat party. He wore it, but he wore it over a T-shirt, and you can still see it signed in the pictures. But it's what a cool thing to have signed, like "Have a Nice Day" and the T-shirt. I think that's pretty cool. So Jamie's got two really cool signed Mick Foley things there, and and so it was sweet and short, and it was one of those few wrestling encounters I've had where I haven't acted like an arse by accident. Just because of my nerves, or B, the wrestler was really cool as well. And so usually one of those two things gives my wrestler encounters. So that was great. And then we went on to enjoy the show. And I remember that night was the first time I'd ever seen Billy Kirkwood live. I'd never heard of him before then. And of course,
me too.
Really? Were you there that night?
Yeah, I was at the show. Yeah.
That's so funny. Like, so, and I'd never, ever heard of him. And it's just mental to think that, because he's not only a big name in the wrestling scene nowadays because of this commentary work on ICW, but he's just a big name in comedy in general now. And he's, if you don't know Billy Kirkwood, folks, just go and look him up. He's hilarious. I can't tell you how many times I've seen him do his thing either in ICW or at comedy clubs, but you're always going to be side splitting when that happens. I have to say, Kirkwood is a polished, experienced comedian. Mick Foley is not as experienced, or wasn't as experienced at that point at stand-up, and Kirkwood did kind of steal the show comedy-wise. But
absolutely,
he's tough competition. For Mick Foley, it was more just like, we're happy to see you, and his stories are interesting. But the funniest act that night was Kirkwood.
I was I'm getting confused because I didn't realize he did two. I think I went to the first one, which
the first one was at Apollo.
Oh, maybe not then. I went to the one at the Old Fruit Market.
That was his third time there. That was after this.
Oh, right, okay. It's been more than twice. All right, I went to his third one, and I never met him, but I just saw the show. And I must say, Kirkwood was he did steal the show. Billy Kirkwood was hilarious. I remember being in tears. And I kind of knew Billy Kirkwood because of ICW, but not like, I was still too young, I think, to go to one of the shows. Because at that point they were running nightclubs and you had to be 18 again. And I remember telling my dad, I was like, oh, this guy Billy Kirkwood's in the wrestling too. He's really, really funny. And I think my dad thought I meant Bob Kirkwood, who was a wrestler on World of Sport. And my dad was like, oh, Billy Kirkwood, he's been about for years.
Brilliant.
But he's so funny. And I didn't think Mick was hilarious, right? But I think the point of Mick Foley's stand-up was more the storytelling.
Absolutely.
And everybody was very polite, you know what I mean? Like laughing at jokes that we've heard a million times on documentaries, and laughing at things that weren't that funny, and giving them a wee sort of tennis clap, at these sort of moments where they might not be, the most side-splitting things ever, but it's Mick Foley,
It's funny you say that, repeating the jokes, because if anyone listening ever had the 2-disc DVD set, Mick Foley's Greatest Hits and Misses, he opens up that DVD saying, if you bought this, you're probably a big fan. Again, probably not dating very much. And he opens the show. He opened the show with the same exact line.
Right.
But like you're saying, the storytelling was great. The show was worth the money and then some. You mentioned about people being polite. After he'd done his comedy bit, they opened it up to questions.
All right. As you do.
From the fans. And, I've always tried to ask a question at these things whenever it's a show, whenever Inside the Ropes there's a show and questions are asked, I have usually been able to ask a question. And if not, I've certainly tried. And so I had my hand up for this one. This is one of the few times I didn't get picked. And I wanted to, and there were some really good questions that night. I can't remember them, but the question that I had two in my mind. I either wanted to ask, are you behind Rock or Cena at WrestleMania? Which I thought would be quite lame. It would just maybe get a laugh. But you know, because Mick Foley had just recently been rock bottomed by The Rock on Raw at
Right.
that point. But the main question I had in mind to ask was, you've always maintained that falling through the cell was an accident in the 1998 Hell in a Cell match. If that's the case, what was the original plan for the win, for the finish? And I think we actually know the answer to that now, because I think he's spoken about it, like in his anniversary tour of that. But I never did get picked. And instead, when it came down to one last question, they went with this other guy. And I don't know who he was, but I'm going to do a wee impression of him. And I'm going to preface this, Chris, with a disclaimer. I'm not a football fan. I know nothing about football. So don't come at me with your Rangers v Celtic stuff.
Right.
I don't know and I don't care. It's not a
I'm
snobby
going to
thing.
bite my tongue here. Right.
So, and this is an impression. This is what the guy said. So, we've had an evening of great questions, wrestling questions. This is 2012.
Oh,
and the last question you think is going to be, and I'm thinking I've got this great Hell in a Cell question. So if I'm not getting picked, I expect this to be an equally good question. Okay, so we'll go to the guy in the hoodie at the front row for the final question. Hey, hi, hello, Mick. I can't, Mick. Great to see you here. Mick, I need to ask you. I need help about a team I know, a team I love. Yeah, my team, Rangers. Well, we need your help, Mick. There's people that say we're no a team anymore. They say we're Sevco. There's people we need some love. We need your embrace. We need you. And by this point, everyone's going, shut up. And I don't think he actually finished his question, and somebody had to kind of translate it to Mick, and he just made a joke out of it. And I remember just being furious that this guy had wasted Mick Foley's time talking about a local football issue that no wrestling fan next to Mick Foley being in the room would have cared about in that moment, and that Mick Foley certainly would have cared about. And then,
God, so what did Mick say?
I can't remember. I think he just laughed it off and made the whole thing about, oh, you Scots are hard to understand, you know.
Right, aye.
Maybe if anyone's listening who was there can remember, you fill us in. And then,
oh dear, that's so embarrassing.
The last embarrassing thing that happened that night, and I'm not going to name names here because A, I'm not sure which person from ICW this was, because I always get it mixed up, and B, even if I did name them, I'd worry they'd come and kill me. So there was a few. This is 2012, so ICW was popular, but they weren't like in their boom period that they were around the time of like Drew and Grado at Fear and Loathing, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But they were popular. There was a buzz about them, and they were doing the Rattle only shows. They were doing the Garage at that point quite regularly, and someone from ICW. I'll tell you who. It was one of two people, and I'll tell you who after we've recorded this, Chris. But someone from ICW, a prominent person from ICW, bought him. I think bought him a Buckfast at the bar.
Yeah, I think I remember this. Yeah,
and interrupted him as he was trying to do his like final words, and it clearly ticked Mick off because he was just like, "What are you doing? I don't want that." And they kind of put an awkward stop in the show. And and then after that, I'd never been to an ICW show at that point, and I'd said to Jamie, "Oh, these ICW guys are idiots. I don't want to go see an ICW show." And lo and behold, within months, I was in my first show, and I fell in love with the product. But yeah, and then he ended the night by dancing off to Somebody Call My Mama.
He did that as well. He did that at the 2013 one as well.
Maybe we are talking about the same show, but this was definitely classic round. Because I've got the pictures. Okay,
and stuff. It must just do the same routine and just assume like different people come every time. I don't know. There was a good lot of people there at the Old Fruit Market one. Like it was a good crowd. It's not as if it was like they were struggling to sell tickets.
No, absolutely. Maybe that's why. Maybe they jam-packed the classic round so they knew they could try it at a bigger venue next time round. But that was it. My interaction with Mick was really, really good.
That's great.
But a few cringy moments came out of that as well.
You said about in terms of people asking questions at these shows. So I've never been able to do it. I don't have the guts to do that, right? I've performed in front of hundreds, thousands, maybe once, in like theatres and been high pressure situations and that sort of thing. I can do that nae bother. But to ask a question to not only a wrestler or a wrestling personality that I admire, surrounded by other wrestling fans who are immediately judging you I can't do it.
It's funny that because I often feel when I've done it that I feel like nobody's really paying attention to me because everyone's wanting to see the reaction of the wrestlers. So I still feel quite hidden even when I do it. And I did it at the Heyman show, the Bischoff show, DDP, JR most recently. I think I did it at the Sunny Inside the Rope show as well. I asked her about how she felt about the term diva, because this is before they used it, and this is in 2013.
Right.
She didn't quite understand it because I waffled a bit and it was too wordy, and it could have been a lot more concise. So yeah, I think that after a while, Inside the Rope stopped doing them. That's why it was a surprise to see them do it at the JR one, just because they were always getting like a drunk idiots asking about Rangers.
Well, that was my next. No comment. Well, my next point on that one was at the Bischoff show in 2016. I've got so I was trying to film. I know you're not supposed to film at these shows, but I wanted to get like one clip of the experience because I was like, I'm so big on my vlogs and having footage of memorable moments of my life. I just wanted to have a clip, like 10 seconds or something of this Bischoff show. And I was doing a vlog, I think, for the YouTube channel as well at the time. So I was like trying to get content, So I just so happened to take the camera out and start filming this one question. And I was hoping it was going to be a quick question so Bischoff could, answer and I could get like 10 seconds of his answer. So the microphone goes to this guy and the guy goes, "Good evening, Eric. Fancy shoes?" And he doesn't even ask a question. He comments on Eric Bischoff's cowboy boots, but he doesn't even say, "Oh, nice shoes. Where did you get them?" He just goes, "Fancy shoes."
Oh dear!
I remember.
I that night I asked Bischoff the same exact question that I asked Heyman about a month before, just to see what their responses would be. I think it's on the Inside the Rope YouTube channel. Yeah, it was the brand split one. It's on their YouTube channel actually, and all you can hear of me is just me saying thank you at the end of it. But yeah, that's a testament to Inside the Ropes and how good their shows are. But it's I'm always quite keen to do it, but only when you get the chance, really. But no, I kind of get it as well, because what you're saying about being judged, because nobody hates wrestling more than wrestling fans, so nobody hates other wrestling fans more than wrestling fans.
Oh God, I know. Which is funnily because we're trying to encourage people to listen to us.
I know.
Yeah, so you can give me the segue now if you want about being thankful, and we'll kid on it never happened before.
Here, Chris, would you say you were... I can't even remember what it was about. You feeling thankful, Chris?
I'm thankful for Mick Foley. I'm thankful for Inside the Rope shows. I'm thankful that you asked the question at the shows so I don't have to. But I'm also thankful for something else this week. And here we go.
What I'm thankful for in wrestling this week.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, this week in terms of being thankful, I really took some time to think this week. I couldn't think of something off the top of my head because the last few times I've been talking about music and I've wanted to keep it in a sort of, theme sort of thing. I thought, okay, I need to go different this week. I need to kind of change the record, if you will. And this week, I couldn't come up with anything in particular. So the thing I went with is because I was watching a Raw from 98, and it was October 19th, 1998, and it was a particularly good Raw. And it is the Raw after Judgment Day 1998, where, and if you don't remember that, at Judgment Day 98, it's Undertaker versus Kane for the vacant WWF Championship with Stone Cold Steve Austin as the special guest referee. And if Stone Cold Steve Austin does not crown a new champion, he will be fired. Vince McMahon guarantees it. So that's like the story of Judgment Day. So then what happens is that Austin counts out both Taker and Kane. There's no new champion. Vince comes out and fires Austin. So this night after Judgment Day is like a sort of what's going to happen now? Or Austin's no longer with us. What's the fallout of the show sort of thing? So I was watching the show and I was enjoying the kind of fluidity of it, and I was enjoying the story that was being told with Austin not being there and that sort of thing. And then there's this moment where, also in the show, Mark Henry, who is about to become a sexual chocolate, has filed a sexual assault charge against China, right? Mm-hmm. As you do. So China's at ringside, being the manager for DX, and then these two policemen come and they arrest China because of a sexual harassment assault thing. Right. So they arrest China and they put it in the back of the car, and then they drive away, and there's still two police officers standing there, and they go, "Hey, is that Stone Cold?" So they walk over to Stone Cold, and there's these two police officers now talking to Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Stone Cold Steve Austin's holding a gun, and hey, I'm explaining this way too much. And the police officers are like saying, can you step out of the car, please? And they're thinking, okay, now Austin's really in trouble. He's been caught with a gun on these public premises. He's going to need to get questioned. He's going to need to get taken downtown, baby.
Uh-huh.
So it turns out that the police officers are just massive fans of Stone Cold, and they ask for his autograph. So as Austin's signing the autograph, JR and King are like selling it on commentary. They're like, they're asking for an autograph. He's got a gun, damn it. Arrest him. And then Vince, it cuts to Vince, who's watching the show in his locker room, and Vince is like, what the hell type of city is this? What type of cops are they? And it's like this big hilarious moment. And I was thinking, see, when comedy is done right in wrestling, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So this week, I'm thankful for comedy in wrestling when done right. And but nothing really too much else to say about it, other than the fact that it's very nice to kind of get a wee break from the seriousness of these really, adrenaline-fueled matches and moments and fights. It's always very serious. It's always very like, we have to climb the ladder and retrieve the briefcase sort of, moments where you're so uptight and there's so much pressure on wrestling and there's so much pressure on these moments being good, where it's nice to kind of take a step back, have a laugh, use characters that are not only hilarious, but they're entertaining in other ways, and you're able to find these sort of gold gems, in these shows. And later on in that show, basically what happens is the Stooges decide to go and get a coffee instead of watching Vince McMahon's back. Vince is going mental. So then Mankind comes in and he starts like trying to, chill out Vince McMahon. He's brought a game of Twister. They start playing Twister. And of course, this is just the advent of Socko. So Socko's trying to make Vince feel better. And then Vince gets annoyed and throws Mankind out. So then Austin eventually finds Vince and takes him to the ring and attempts to shoot Vince in the head. But as he pulls the trigger, he pulls the trigger and this little banner comes out of the gun and it says, bang, 316. And Vince urinates himself. It's this big hilarious moment. And it's just a good episode of Raw where there's like a recurring theme throughout the whole show. It's always funny. Vince is just selling it, with so much, what's the word? He's selling his heart out here, trying to make it funny, but also make him seem like the bad guy or the villain, and Vince just doing an amazing job. Austin being top notch, and when comedy's done right and you can have a laugh in a wrestling show, that's not a bad thing at all.
It's funny you mentioned that because Vince McMahon, I don't think gets credit for the amount of how good he is at comedy. And I say that with a pinch of salt because I know he's notorious for being a fan of toilet humor.
Well, that's the thing.
I'm not really talking about that stuff that he apparently seemingly loves, but there's just the McMahon character, I think, has been responsible for some great comedy moments. One that came to mind there, which is a really obscure one, is that do you remember in 2003 when he started bullying Zach Gowen?
Yeah, jeez.
And it's a bit edgy. Like, Zach Gowen is quite an inspirational guy. He's a wrestler who had his leg amputated when he was a child, I think. But he made it as a wrestler, and he made it to the WWE and had a run in 2003 in the WWE as this kind of inspirational character. He was paired with Hogan, and like he had some fun moments, some fun matches with Vince McMahon and with the Big Show, and he was. Did I mention he was paired with Hogan or Captain America as he was, or Mr. America? Sorry, don't
Captain America.
Yeah, Chris Evans just shows up. But there was one segment that he did, and I only remember this one moment where he's like, there's McMahon and Gowen in the ring, and Gowen's. I don't think Gowen's got his leg on, his prosthetic leg. He might do, but he's got his cane to help him walk. And then McMahon's just berating him in the ring. And at one point, McMahon goes, "Look, he's got a weapon!" and just swipes his cane from him. It's so terrible. Right. So, like, Vince McMahon, I think, had some... I also remember the during 2006, during the McMahon DX war, when McMahon was, like, walking down a corridor and there was this weird alien that started following him and doing the walk behind him. Do you remember?
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So, like, McMahon's done some really good stuff. But the thing that you talk about comedy and wrestling, you mentioned Mark Henry. And there is sometimes such a thing as stuff in wrestling that is comedic unintentionally so. So, like, you think of Mark Henry and attempts at comedy, and you think maybe, like, the Mae Young stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going a wee bit out of field here. But one thing that bugs me is if you ask somebody, what's your favourite Mark Henry theme song, they always get it wrong. It's not that I ask this question a lot, but people will either say the 3-6 Mafia sing "Somebody Gonna Get the Rescued," or they'll go to the Sexual Chocolate theme. And of course, they're wrong. The best and unintentionally funniest theme song Mark Evan Henry ever had was his 2002 theme, Chris, which was called "Start Rockin'." Do you remember the song?
No, not off the top of my head.
Here it is. It's about 3 minutes of just people going, "Wah!" and then yeah, for no reason. And then Mark Henry is like, you think about the 3-6 Mafia theme that he had when the World's Strongest Man, the Hall of Pain.
Whoa, hey, say what?
That was great because he was like, it was to the rhythm of the way he walked. But this was just somebody going, whoa! It's like there's somebody doing an aerobics class. Come on, everybody, jump on, jumping jacks, woo! Yeah! What the hell?
Oh my god! Oh, I think because when he used to come out in 2002 that song, like he was a bit, leaner, and he had the kind of blue jumpsuit on. Yeah, and I guess he was trying to walk quicker. I don't know.
He was kind of like happy-go-lucky Mark Henry at that point. Like, I'll take your ass, but he's also game for a laugh. He was kind of a hybrid between Sexual Chocolate and the World's Strongest Man.
Imagine that was his theme song when he came out to wrestle Undertaker at WrestleMania 22. It would be a different attitude whatsoever.
Yeah, like my wife is a fitness instructor, and like I kind of want her to do like a class with that song. You know what I mean? yeah, woo!
Great. Just like why Mark Henry?
I know. That's great. Like give that to like I don't know, like Billy Kidman or something like that. Not Mark Henry.
No. Billy Kidman's one that he got into this too was great. The one he got. Get up. Aye,
you sounded like a Glaswegian PE teacher there. Get up.
Get up, come on! Get up!
Me, I know a few of them.
Oh god, right, anyway, we better move on.
Recommendation? Anyway, do that quickly.
Comedy and wrestling, yes, do recommendation. What's the match of the week? Here we go.
Wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations. Match of the week.
Oh yeah.
Right, Chris. We're going to do this. This is an express segment. So I'm going to cheat because you did this last week as well. So I'm not recommending a full-on show like you did last time or the week before that. I forget when it was, but I'm recommending a particular episode of SmackDown because of 2 matches, and I couldn't decide between 2 of them. So I'm going to do both of them. So fight me. So. The date of the SmackDown, folks, make sure you write this down in your radio diaries, everyone listening. The SmackDown is August 8th. The year is 2002, and there are 2 very important matches on this show. It's a 6-man tag in the mid of the card. Now, this match is not the main event, but listen to who's in it. On one team, you've got the team of some guys called John Cena, Edge, and Rey Mysterio.
Yes.
Taking on Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero.
God.
And 6-man action. And this is really the first flavor of like this. Even I know like not all these guys are considered to be part of the SmackDown 6, only some of them are. But this is the kind of first kind of flavor of the SmackDown 6, I think, and the types of matches that they would get. And also SmackDown 6, I don't think anyone can decide on who the exact 6 are. There's always variation.
Yep, I agree.
But like, Mysterio, Edge, Benoit and Guerrero were certainly, and Eddie, absolutely. They're certainly they're synonymous with that phrase, and it's just great action-packed wrestling. And there would go on to be better tag matches in SmackDown at that time, but I feel like this is an instigator to that, and it's important for that reason. And another match, which is probably the one that I want to shed more light on and put a bit more emphasis on, is that this show is main evented by the only time that Brock Lesnar ever faced Hulk Hogan. Now,
yes, that's right.
You'll know the match because WWE still like to use it in video packages when they're promoting Lesnar. And the thing is, I'd never seen it when it broadcast, so I'd only ever seen it being represented in video packages, which usually just focuses on the end of the match where Hogan's a bloody mess and Lesnar bear hugs him, and it's not really just that at all. It's a surprisingly competitive 2-sided match. It's not all Lesnar. And younger wrestling fans who don't know much about Lesnar's first run in WWE should go back and watch this and see how much of a contrast it is to the Lesnar that we know now. And I'm not knocking the way Lesnar is now because I think it works what Lesnar does nowadays. But back then, he would have Still a lot of aggression, a lot of physical dominance and power in his matches, but he would sell and he had a more diverse moveset. So you see him dropping an elbow a few times in this match, for example. And Hogan is at this point, he's like 49 or something. He's still at an age where he can do it. It's funny to think that Hogan then is the same age that Jericho is now.
Mental.
I know.
Absolutely mental.
So they have a good back and forth match. So you see Hogan at really the last time in his career that, he was able to kind of do it at a decent level. I think his last great match was probably the McMahon match. I don't really rate the Michaels match or the Orton match that much.
I quite like the Shawn one, yeah. I quite like the Shawn one.
Oh god, that's another story for another day. But fair enough. So Hogan's pretty good in it, and it isn't just the case that Lesnar dominates Hogan. Hogan puts up a fight and gets a lot of offense in, and I like that because Hogan was on a hot run at the time. It was his last match for a while in the company, and it meant more then that Lesnar, who was about to go on and defeat The Rock at SummerSlam, it meant more that Lesnar not only defeated them, but made them pass out. The match ends due to ref stoppage because he passes out from the bear hug, covered in blood. It's a very powerful image. And so, those are my recommendations from the August, I think it was, did I say August 8th? Yes, August 8th, 2002 SmackDown. You've got a 6-man tag, Cena, Edge, and Rey Mysterio versus Benoit Guerrero and Kurt Angle. And then the main event, which is Brock Lesnar and Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
See, in my head to that Lesnar Hogan match is that it's really violent, like with Hogan just covered in blood at the end, and then Lesnar just like suffocating him in this bear hug and just like blood pouring out of Hogan's head, which always confused me because SmackDown has always been like rated PG. Yeah, like even back in like in the Attitude Era, like Raw, of course, was TV-14 and even sometimes TVMA sometimes. Yeah, but SmackDown's always been PG, so things like that. And things like some of the Stacy Keibler stuff and even just the Vince stuff. And I think there was a moment where Batista and Melina had a sexual encounter before he went out and wrestled later that night.
Right,
things like that on SmackDown. And it's like, really? Like I remember watching this like on a Friday night on Sky Sports with my dad sometimes,
Yeah.
It's,
I think
weird.
it just shows how much I think the standards have changed. The standards of what constitutes PG nowadays is
I guess
a lot more different nowadays. So I think you could kind of be a bit more edgy back then, even on a PG show like SmackDown, where you're right, they would bleep the word ass, but they would have blatant sexual innuendo and stuff that we would probably raise a big eyebrow at nowadays by today's standards. But as a historical curiosity, I think it's a fun episode of SmackDown to go back to.
So you're still sort of going through 2002. Has Kane returned yet?
No, the vignettes have just started on the episode of Raw that I'm currently on, where so people, the pyro hits and you get the vignettes and and you get like the kind of my time has come, and there's one bit in the Titantron, how the text used to come on. It's like confront Satan and then dance with his mistress.
Really?
It says that on the Titantron in the Kane kind of font, the hell background. Like, who wrote that? But one thing I didn't realize, I'm noticing a lot of stuff that I didn't realize going through this, and I didn't realize that Kane was actually using the Slow Chemical theme before that return.
That was going to be that was my point. Yeah,
I was blown away because I always thought that he started using Slow Chemical solely when he returned with the new mask and with the mouth on show and stuff. I was blown away to see that he was actually using it just before he was injured, when he was feuding with the NWO.
He starts using it because that's when Forcible Entry came out.
That's right.
And they were just trying to use as much as they could. So they used it for like 3 weeks. And then they must have thought like he's taking time off, so he's going to need to come back later and maybe we'll debut the new theme when he comes back. So they didn't use it for like one other week. So he did like 3 weeks of Slow Chemical, then back to the original Kane theme for 1 week. Yeah. Then he was written off TV. And then, of course, like it comes back with Slow Chemical. But that's such an underrated return. No one ever talks about it. And it's in Madison Square Garden. They tease it, as you say, for weeks with the pyro and the text and all that stuff, the weird text.
Dancing with Satan's mistress, never forget it.
When he does return, it's this massive moment, and it's in Madison Square Garden, so it makes it even more special, So that's a really underrated return. I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about it when you get to it.
Oh, it'll be happening soon because I'm consuming a lot of wrestling right now. And I know we're kind of past the thankful bit and we should really be moving on, but I feel really motivated right now just to express how thankful in general I am just to have wrestling. Can you imagine going through this pandemic even just 10 years ago? and like obviously we would find stuff and we'd be able to talk to our loved ones, but wrestling's one of the best, like it's one of the best forms of escapism. It's one of the best art forms for that, for me. And everyone has their own different thing. I also love video games.
Absolutely.
And I like movies and things, but wrestling is just, for me, it works on a different level because it's the hybrid of athleticism and soap opera and storytelling that it just draws me in. I can sit and watch and be captivated by it, or I can have it on in the background whilst I'm focusing on my work. But were it not for wrestling on this podcast, I genuinely think that lockdown in this pandemic for me would be a lot harder. And I don't want turn this into not sappy's not the word, but too heavy. But
no, I get you.
I think everyone's finding this difficult, aren't they? And I'm not saying that the WWE or AEW makes it better, but it's nice to have that. And the fact that I've started watching NXT and AEW more regularly, and it's just having little things to look forward to in a difficult time is important when you can't do what we would usually do. Like, you and I go and sit in a pub and play wrestling video games like we did the last time we saw each other. We don't have that as an option, so it's nice to have something like we can access that's good escapism.
Well, my original thankful for suggestion this week was just the WWE Network, but I thought I was a bit too broad,
Well,
but
full
absolutely.
I was going to make Mark Henry's theme my thankful for next week, but I won't do that.
Not anymore. That was, unless you want to sing it again next week. That's up to you.
Any excuse to play it. I've decided it's the new theme for this podcast as well. That's okay. We don't need to do that.
What I'll do at the end of the show, we'll play that instead.
Okay.
Like instead of Ahmed's
Yeah!
Right, anyway, so this week we want to talk about our favourite pay-per-views. This is stemmed because of last week when I was talking about my recommendation was not a match of the week, it was a show of the week. And last week I was talking about No Mercy 2007 and how it's one of my favourite pay-per-views of all time. And that kind of got me thinking, okay, what are my other favourites? So could I make a list? Could we talk about them? And it kind of made me kind of curious to see how many we'd have in common, because we like a lot of the same stuff. We are kind of heyday in terms of being fans. I mean, like, arguably it could be now, but in terms of being younger, we're kind of around the same time, kind of ruthless aggression sort of time, late Attitude Era. We kind of have a fondness for that sort of time. So I'm curious to know which ones you've got on your list.
My list has grown kind of arms and legs. It's created a monster, so it's a long list, and as always, we'll never get through it all. But it'd be cool to kind of cross things off and check things off as we go along, and we'll end up jumping back and forward through time like we're speeding in a DeLorean, and it'll be amazing. And I'm looking forward to get into this, Chris. But before that happens, do you know what time it is?
Oh, here we go.
It's time.
It's time, ladies and gents. It's time for the toilet break. Here we go.
Yeah, see you in a second.
Toilet break.
Ooh, yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. For the duration of the toilet break, I was just singing Mark Henry's theme song. How was your toilet break?
I do hope that you were singing it loudly so that the loved ones that you live with could hear you going, yeah, woo, whilst you're in the toilet. That's what I'm hoping for here.
I don't know why I find that so funny, you doing that. Oh,
it's the idea that it's supposed to go with Mark Henry of all wrestlers. How was my toilet break, Chris? I feel like I've just pissed off Kurt Angle, because as I got out my seat to go to the bathroom, I twisted my ankle, and now I can't put weight on it. It's like the spirit of Mark Henry is teasing me. But yeah, it's so apart from the fact that I'm now in pain, we're going to keep going because that's how much I love this podcast, Chris.
Good. I like the dedication. That's why you're here.
Yep. And I feel like Scotty Hottie in 2000 when they had to write him off by getting his ankle snapped by Kurt Angle. I remember being raging about that as a wee boy because I loved Scotty Hottie.
You've mentioned this a few times. Was it a dying love for Scotty Hottie?
I think it was everything. I think it was. It kind of goes back to the fact that, like, when I was growing up, I always liked the brighter, more colorful cartoons. Like my older brother liked like the kind of darker Batman cartoons and the grittier stuff, whereas I just wanted like the sunshine and the happiness, the simple kind of cartoons. And I think I've always retained a part of that. Like, I don't like horror comedy as a genre because as much as I love horror, I don't like to fuse the two, because if something's either for me lighthearted or it's not, so it doesn't. Like, I never liked the Simpsons Halloween specials because they were too dark and too
me
violent
neither.
for my taste.
Yeah.
So I've always ignored them. But then there are so many Simpsons fans who would say that like those are probably the best stuff that the Simpsons have ever come out with. So it's an each to their own thing, and I think my love for characters like Scotty Too Hottie, it comes from something like that, because he was just a fun-loving, positive guy who had a funny name, funny hair. He always seemed to manage to keep that hat on for way longer than he needed to when he was wrestling. And he did and the worm as a move, like Mick Foley, friend of the show, presenter, I suppose, like of this episode, always poked fun at the worm and the people's elbow as being similarly stupid moves. And it is stupid, but it's so fun. And I'm kind of glad that it's had a semi-resurgence with Otis, doing his own version of the worm. The funny thing is, though, with Scotty is that we're breaking the rules again. Like my good friend Robert, I can't go a week without mentioning him. My oldest friend Robert can do the worm and used to do it at primary school discos. And Robert and I have been best friends since we were like primary one. And I remember at one school disco getting so annoyed that he was getting all the attention, because I was just, must have just been full of myself and a brat, really, in this moment. And I just remember, like, he did the worm, and there was a big. This is primary school, so this is like primary 6 maybe. So we're all maybe about 9 or 10. And so he does this worm at the school disco whilst Roland or Teenage Dirtbag is probably playing, and everyone's giving him Yaldi. And I get so jealous of the attention he's getting. I tried to do the worm, didn't think it through, just fell face first and flopped and bashed my chin into the cold, hard floor of the primary school hall, which was basically just like a gym floor. So that's I love Scotty Totty, even though he probably caused me a jaw injury. So
So when you hurt your ankle before you went to the toilet there, were you doing the worm kind of with the hopping sort of thing? You be going W-O-R-M.
Do you remember Rebellion 2001 where Paul Heyman was going, "It's the slug, S-L-U-G"?
Also, I know we're talking about underproduced commentators on certain shows. Those UK pay-per-views, they didn't care what they were saying.
Yeah, William Regal comes out and Paul Heyman goes, "I hear Tony Blair is a huge fan of William Regal." And then GR's like, "Oh my God, I apologize."
JR always has to apologise because he has to be the politically correct straight man,
I know.
He has to
the
try
Big Show
because he has to put up with Lawler and that.
The Big Show weighs 36 stone. What do you mean he weighs 36 stone? He weighs 36 stone. He's 500 pounds, which is the equivalent of 36 stone. Why would you weigh anything in stones? Pounds. Yeah, that's money. As JR and Heyman as Big Show are, doing his thing in Rebellion 2001. Go and watch it. I'm not doing it justice.
No, listen, Rebellion 2001, we've mentioned that a lot as well. Is that on your list of favourite shows? I'm assuming it is.
I actually didn't put it in. And I don't really know why. I don't know if it's because it's actually not that good a show. I think I'm only putting it on for the sentimental reasons. It probably does belong on the list. It's definitely the show I probably had the most fun watching as a kid because I was there. But but in putting this list together, I don't know what it was like for you, but I started off with a humongous list, and then I went through it and I was like, well, how much of these are just like one match cards? So for example, I had WrestleMania 18 on my list for a long time, and then I took it out because really at best it's Rock and Hogan and a stretch Taker and Flair. But those, and that's not to say there aren't other good matches on the show, but I feel like there's so few, and you compare that to WrestleMania 17, which is definitely on both of our lists. That there's a real selection of great matches in that show.
Yeah, good shout. I was trying to be quite brutal. I'm in the double figures, but I was being quite selective. Like my latest one is Money in the Bank 2013.
Okay,
and that's my latest one. I was trying to be quite brutal. I could have put NXT Dallas in here, but I didn't bother with NXT.
I didn't do any NXT because I thought that would be cheating.
Yeah. See, I think it's cheating as well. That's probably why I didn't do it. But in terms of like all the other shows and stuff, I started with the WrestleManias because they're easier to remember.
Yeah.
And I put in the WrestleManias. Then after that, I just kind of went on sort of chronological order. And tried to kind of like add up all the other sort of random ones that I like. In terms of WrestleManias, you want to fire through your ones you've got on the list if you've got a couple of them?
Oh, well, yeah. I don't think anything in my WrestleMania list. I've literally just cut one of them just there. And I'm going to cut that one as well. Okay, so
right.
I've narrowed it down. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 WrestleManias now.
Okay.
And they are in order: WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania 19, WrestleMania 20, WrestleMania 24, WrestleMania 28, and WrestleMania 30.
Right. Okay. Nice. I also have 6 WrestleManias. I have WrestleMania 17.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 19.
Yep.
WrestleMania 20.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 21.
Okay.
WrestleMania 24.
Mm-hmm.
And WrestleMania 31.
I just slashed 31 off my list, and that 31 is a great show. I love Sting and Hogan. I love Rollins and Lesnar and Reigns at the end.
Sting and Hogan? You mean Sting and Triple H?
Is it Sting and Hogan? Oh, yes.
Starrcade 97.
Well, Hogan was involved in that match, but
he was, yeah.
Do you remember when they teased that Scott Hall might do the Razor's Edge in that match? And for a minute, everyone thought, "Oh my god, he's going to do the Razor's Edge," and then we're like, "No, he's not going to do the Razor's Edge."
No, because he goes to do the Razor's Edge and then he gets backdropped and lands on his head. It was worse.
Oh god! But that was a good show. Like, I remember feeling intrigued about Taker and Wyatt. The only thing I would change about that show really is that I would make it dark. You know what I mean? Like, because the Undertaker's entrance in daylight or dusk is doesn't work.
I hear everybody saying that. I don't mind it at all. I think it makes it so different. It kind of reminds me of WrestleMania 9.
Yeah.
Like Taker coming out. Oh, you seen the Last Ride documentary? Did you see the behind the scenes footage of him rehearsing that WrestleMania 9 entrance with the big black bird?
Oh god, yeah.
Oh my, what? The footage in that documentary is mental.
I think it's just incredible. I mean, the third episode had a shot of Kane chilling out during the Super Bowl commercial with his mask off, and like the inner 6-year-old in me just lost his shit.
Was that the Super Bowl commercial that was from?
I think so, yeah. I think it's like when Kane's chilling out in the back with his coffee in the background of that shot.
We're a non-violent form of entertainment. That was awesome.
Excellent.
So they should do another one. Why don't they do another one? Oh god. Anyway, so yes, WrestleMania 31 is special for lots of reasons, but we've talked about it a bunch before. So let's try and do one we've not talked about. Did you mention 24?
Yeah, I've got 24, which I think we might be maybe a minority, because like I think everyone agrees it's a good Mania, but I don't know if everyone would necessarily have it on their list.
Well, I feel like that's like the standard bearer for like modern WrestleManias. Like every time there's a good WrestleMania, I always go, "Oh, it was the best one since 24." Now I'll say 31, but at 31, I was like, "That's the best one since 24."
Well, I mean, I think this is interesting because we were very different ages at this point in terms of like maturity. So I was 17 when this show happened, and you must have been what, 12?
12 or something, yeah. 11 or 12.
So,
I think.
So for you and I don't know if it meant different things to us because of the age difference between us.
Well, I don't remember at the time like thinking it was this great WrestleMania. I think it has sort of evolved in my head over time. Just thinking about the great show that it is. And not only is it good in terms of matches, but it's the first one in ages, where it's the first outdoor one in ages. I thought that was so cool at the time. But just the spectacle of like the pyro is unbelievable in this show. And just like wee things, what makes a great wrestling pay-per-view for me, this is probably a good way to start the whole segment, actually. We should have done this before. But what makes a good wrestling pay-per-view for me is when you've got lots of little things that surround the great matches. It doesn't need to be a card of 8 5-star matches to be a great pay-per-view, No. You can have 2 or 3 really good matches, that's all you need. But if lots of other things work, that's going to help that show big time in terms of the entrances, the set, the crowd, the commentary, the backstage segments, all that stuff. They need to kind of flow together. And there was so many good wee things in WrestleMania 24 that I think elevates it. You've got a great Money in the Bank ladder match. You've got a great WWE title match. You've got a great World Heavyweight title match. You've got Flair versus Shawn. You've got Batista and Umaga having a really fun match.
Yeah, underrated. That
Really
Batista
underrated.
Maga match. It's quite forgotten about that match, but as a WrestleMania match, but it's really good. The show it also aesthetically looks lovely. It was the first WrestleMania shot in HD. And it's there's you're like there's so many little moments that surround the big moments. I'm thinking about Matt Hardy's return during the Money in the Bank match, which was a big deal, a big pop at that point. One of the coolest like run-ins like in a ladder match that I can remember. I love the opening match with Finlay and JBL. Like, it's a good opener. It's fun, and that's what I love about this meeting as well. Is variety. You say like you only need to have about maybe 3 great matches. Really, the rest just comes down to variety, and I think WrestleMania 24 in that regard works for the same reason that the recent AEW Double or Nothing worked, because that show was a variety show, and WrestleMania 24 is because you go from the kind of sloppy yet fun to watch opener to the Money in the Bank ladder match. You've got Flair and Michaels, enough said. The emotion in that match is incredible. You've got Triple H, Orton, and Randy, which is like a solid championship match, a solid marquee match. You mentioned Batista and Umaga.
I love the entrances of that triple threat match. See, the individual entrances. Cena coming out to that marching band is unbelievable. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then Orton comes out to Burning My Light, which I think is super underrated as a theme song. And then Triple H obviously being epic with sort of the game. And because his sort of colours at the time were green, I just remember the green, sort of a luminous green, looking really cool, in the stadium, and then like the water spit and stuff. Actually, all 3 entrances made them look like real main eventers, and they were the top guys. But that adds to that match as a whole, and it is actually quite short. They must have had time cut, but in terms of as a whole presentation, it's a great main event.
Yeah, it's short, but I think it is, and it's a shame that it is. But I also think within the context of such a jam-packed WrestleMania, it works really well. In the same way that the Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton WrestleMania 22 triple threat,
I was just thinking that,
it works in the same capacity. There's those triple threat matches, and then there's the opposite end, which is like your Benoit, Triple H, and Michaels at WrestleMania 21. But and we've spent this amount of time talking about WrestleMania 24, and we've not even mentioned the main event, which is an absolute 5-star classic and a very deserving main event: Edge versus The Undertaker.
I love how this is on last. I love it. Like SmackDown was always treated as it's not going on last, but this one deserved to be in the main event, and it's not just because a babyface was winning. It's because it was the main event. And shout out to Charles Robinson for creating one of the greatest memes ever. Running down the ramp at full speed trying to make the cover, and then when Edge kicks out, Charles has to catch his breath and then go 2. So good stuff, man. And also Floyd Mayweather versus the Big Show.
Oh God, I forgot. Mate, of course, that's a great match.
Which kind of gets divided. Like a lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it. I know my dad hates it because he thinks he always says that it kind of disrespects the wrestling business, and you shouldn't have someone like Floyd Mayweather beating the Big Show, where on the opposite end of that, it's like how much business it did, and it did a really good, number and that sort of thing. But I remember at the time that match being absolutely huge. There was I don't even think it's there anymore, but it's like a sort of Indian takeaway restaurant kind of near my house, and it's kind of like a rough kind of area away at this sort of restaurant, and there was like a phone box, like in one of those old phone boxes that was just always like the glass was always smashed, the phone was always off the hook and all that sort of stuff. But for this WrestleMania, the picture of Mayweather and Big Show was on that phone box, and like someone had put it there, and I remember driving past it like in 2008, being like, man, that's a big deal, Like it must be a massive match. The fact that it's on this fucking phone box thing. So I don't even, when I think of that WrestleMania, like you just did there, you forgot about it. I don't even think about Mayweather Big Show, but it's a huge match,
It really, really is. I'm so glad that we've kicked off by talking about this particular WrestleMania, because I feel like it is really underrated. I think people really, generally speaking, really just reduced it to Flair and Michaels, and I understand why, but it's a great show. Like, and you mentioned that, it's a big deal that SmackDown closed the show, because I remember being a bit miffed that the previous year that Taker and Batista didn't close the show. I remember before WrestleMania 23 submitting a question to JR's blog about what will close WrestleMania. Really? Yeah, what will close WrestleMania, Cena Michaels or Batista Undertaker? And JR replied to me and published it on the blog that month saying, Glenn, who'll close WrestleMania? Hell if I know, but my money's on Batista and Undertaker. And I just felt because, that's just what I thought it would be, because that's the one that the title change was probably going to happen at.
But and also Taker won the Rumble, I suppose.
Yeah, that was the main thing for me. But you're absolutely right. A great show to kick off with. And dude, I've got so many on my list, I have no idea where to go from there.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm conscious of time, so I don't know how to be so selective.
Right, let's do this. I'll run through my list, and then you can comment on my choices.
Okay.
And any of my choices you have, then we'll talk about that show.
Sure.
Does that work? Right, okay. So we have the WrestleManias. The next one on my list is SummerSlam 98, which I talked about recently.
Yeah.
Being just like Attitude Era daft, That would imagine the buzz at that show would have been great. Then we go on to Royal Rumble 2000, also
Bingo!
at Madison Square Garden. Yes, there we go. Good.
We got this.
I knew you'd have that one.
This is a big one. I think Channel 4 actually showed this pay-per-view for free in the UK.
How mental was that? Channel 4?
Yeah. I know. It was a weird time. And, we mentioned Foley for a lot of this show, and how, Foley is my friend Jamie's favourite wrestler. I think Jamie says to me quite often that this is his favourite match. It's definitely, I think it's quite possibly my favourite Foley match, because that angle, Cactus Jack and Triple H, that was the first storyline, post Austin McMahon. That was the first storyline that really, really consumed me as a 10-year-old, 9-year-old I would have been at the time. Boy at the time. In fact, I was 8 when Royal Rumble 2000 happened, but I was following the product at that point. It's just a great show, and it's not really just because of that one match. There's the amazing opener, the tables match as well.
Yeah, you've also Taz and Kurt Angle.
Of course, Taz's debut. Kurt Angle is young and cocky best, I suppose. And the Rumble match, obviously, there was way better Rumble matches than this one, but it's so
I like
fun.
It. Yeah.
There's a great variety show. You've got, the Rikishi, who's really over, in the Garden at this point.
I love that moment, man.
The moment where he eliminates Too Cool. There's the rather ugly elimination of Taka Michinoku.
That was going to be what I was going to say.
And Jerry Lawler just goes boink.
And they play the replay about 7 times, and I remember finding it hilarious, the fact that obviously backstage they're in the middle of such like a massive match, but they must have been howling because they kept playing the replay.
Yeah, over and over again. It's the way that Lawler just does that. Like, watch it, Jar, watch it. Boink. His head.
Takamichi, no clue.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's good.
There's some great moments in that Royal Rumble match, and it was kind of cool, many years later in 2008 when the Rumble went back to the Garden. There's a very brief moment where Foley and Triple H have a stare down in that match. Do you remember? In the 2008 Royal Rumble match, and it's a callback to this night where they had that amazing street fight. It's so brutal and so important to Triple H getting over as a main eventer. And if you don't believe me, just go to the recent WWE Network Untold on that feud where Triple H and Foley sit down candidly and talk about how important those matches were to Triple H's career. He was a star by this point, but Foley solidified him as a main eventer more so than WrestleMania 2000 did. It was Royal Rumble and No Way Out that made Triple H a star.
What a great episode of Untold that is. It may actually be the best one. And my favourite moment of that Untold is Mick Foley talking about taking the pedigree and the thumbtacks. And he says, "You may lose an eye, but think of the pup."
It is gruesome when you think about it. I mean, Jesus.
When I think about it, I just can't fathom it. Like, can you believe that happened? It's just pedigrees on thumbtacks. Mental.
It's no
that Rumble match is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I was going to say, it's just no wonder that apparently Vince McMahon was really reluctant to let Dean Ambrose and Chris Jericho use them when they were feuding in WWE. And of course they eventually did, but apparently it took a lot of convincing, as I recall from the Talk Is Jericho podcast when they told that story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay, well, work your way down the rest of your list, Chris. There's got to be some more.
Well, let's see. What was next on my list? Okay, so going from Royal Rumble 2000, then we jump into 2001, which of course is a beloved year here on the Wrestling Connection. And of course, WrestleMania 17 is on my list. But after that would be Judgment Day 2001, which I remember fondly having on VHS because the ramp was really short, and I remember that standing out. I loved the fact that it was the two teams both in the main event. So you'd have Taker and Austin in the main event. We also had Triple H and Kane in a chain match.
The chain match,
cool.
Yeah, and that's how Kane wins the IC title that night, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Great, and then he's selling the arm. It was the first time you really saw a lot of emotion from Kane. And a build up to this Undertaker and Austin match is when Taker throws Austin through the glass window. And I remember seeing that in like the video package and just freaking out. Like, can you imagine that actually happening? And of course, I remember the Raven one at WrestleMania 17, but that felt more like a part of a match, whereas this was more like it wasn't supposed to happen. Like the glass wasn't supposed to break, which was a really cool thing in this pay-per-view. Also, shout out to William Regal and Rikishi having a really fun opener. And when Rikishi gives Regal the stink face, and Regal's sort of like reaction to it is one of the funniest things ever. And it was actually my Twitter picture for years.
It's beautiful in the loosest sense, and it's a great gifable moment, you know what I mean? I have to, first of all, I watched Judgment Day in full for the first time during this most recent run of wrestling binging that I'm doing. It was one that I never got to have in video, so I never saw it. And even though that's a beloved era of mine. And I remember being excited because I was following the product at the time. I was excited with the prospect of a chain match, and I was convinced that Taker was going to beat Austin, because I just desperately wanted to see it happen. But I'm surprised that you went past SummerSlam 2000.
SummerSlam 2000 isn't high on my list because I haven't watched it as much as others. I never had it. As you say with Judgment Day, I never had it when I was younger. I've only watched it in later years, and it's a great show. But just it's not on my sort of favourites list.
I'll just quickly say then, for me, SummerSlam 2000 is for the same reason that we were praising Double or Nothing, and for the same reason we're praising WrestleMania 24. It's a great variety show. Everything from the incredible hardcore match between Shane and Steve Blackman, where Shane takes that insane bump at Titantron. You've got the first TLC match. Kane versus Undertaker was a big deal at the time because Kane's mask gets removed, and it's the first time that's happened. Yeah. And God, I could not tell you. I must have worn the videotape so thin, trying to pause it just at the right moments to get a glimpse of Kane's face. And now, of course, we've got that network clip that everyone's talking about from the last ride. You've got an amazing main event, the triple threat match from Angle and Rock and Triple H. And it was it was everything WrestleMania 2000 wasn't. I was going to just briefly mention another show that we skipped past historically, and that's the 2001 Rumble. I really just love that for... I like Angle and Triple H. It's one of the best heel matches I think they've ever done on pay-per-view. And I love the Jericho-Benoit ladder match. It's really, really good.
Oh, so good.
Good. We've had a few close calls now in the last couple of years, particularly 2020 actually, but the 2001 Rumbles I think is still my favorite Royal Rumble of all time because it's much like the 2020 Rumble. It's got wee sections to it, and there's a recurring story. Kane has the incredible run. There's the hardcore segment. There's fun cameos from like the Drew Carey thing and the Honky Tonk Man. The Honky Tonk Man entrance is fantastic in that show.
Yeah, it's great.
The Hardys fight each other for the first time. Well, not for the first time, but it felt like one of the earlier times that they did. And Austin was a deserving winner, and he had to really pull out all the stops to finally eliminate Kane. A great show. The only kind of dud from that pay-per-view from that Rumble match was Haku's return, which got zero reaction.
That's right. It's Haku! It's Haku! We're like, what? Why?
It was just it was sad, really, because most fans, I think, had forgotten him. And even though he was at WCW up until like earlier on that month on a pay-per-view on WCW. But the WCW was nothing at that point. So like there was just no reaction at all.
Big Show's return's cool though.
What? Yeah, that's my impression of Jerry Lawler and JR when Big Show comes out.
Give it again.
What? It sounds like I've taken it from the Mark Henry theme.
He's like Borat.
Yeah. Oh God.
What?
Do we need to say much about WrestleMania 17 that hasn't already been said? It's just a great show.
No. It's greatest pay-per-view of all time. I just want to go back to Judgment Day 2001 quickly. I just remembered something. On Judgment Day, we have a really, really cool match between Lita and Chyna. and it was at the point where both girls were so over. It was for the women's title, and WWE recently posted this on their YouTube channel. So actually, last week when it was my turn to be match of the week, and I recommended No Mercy, my secondary choice was going to be Lita and China, because it's just so different, and it's just really cool seeing those two before women's wrestling really had that kind of resurgence, And both girls are just so cool. They're so cool. There is a moment though where China's boob pops out, and the crowd start chanting for it. But what I love about it is the fact that like they managed to silence that. Like this moment happens that was really obvious in the Attitude Era, and yes, that's the testosterone level of the crowd. Let's chant for China. But what happened was that funny moment happened. It's kind of like in the RVD and Eddie Guerrero ladder match, like a fan runs in and that distracts everything, but they still managed to pull it back, and it still ends up being a really, really cool match. So definitely check that out on the WWE YouTube channel recently. China and Lita from Judgment Day 01. The next one on my list was King of the Ring 2001, which I know you love as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that on your list?
Show. It is on my list. For some reason, it was one of those ones that I only added in when I was going back to it and kind of revising my list. But it's a great show. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. The narrative that runs through it and the intermingling stories with Kurt Angle, wanting to win King of the Ring, but also wanting to get vengeance on Shane. Shane screwing Angle over so that he has to fight an extra match before he gets to Shane. Angle is the obvious MVP of the night. But you've also got like the Taker DDP stuff, which was, as a conflict, it was a bit of a dud result, but the build up to that match was really fun.
Come on, Taker, make me famous.
Absolutely, but that's the Kurt Angle show as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I actually don't really rate the triple threat match in the main event. I always found it quite boring. I don't know why. Right. But the Booker T run-in is fun, and also seeing it in context as I've done more recently is pretty good. But yeah, for me, when I think of King of the Ring 2001, I'd be quite happy just to watch the 3 Angle matches, to be honest.
Yep. I love the fact there's 3 stories, like the Angle Shane thing, and then even Taker and DDP gets a lot of hate, but I love it. It's one of those sort of nostalgia, favourites that isn't that great, but I just have these fond memories of it.
Question. First of all, 2 things. I also love that storyline. I just think the King of the Ring confrontation was a disappointment, but I think they made up for it in the cage match of the following pay-per-view. However, are you aware of the true story behind the voiceover? In the videos, where DDP's spying on Sarah and it's the deep voice going, "Hey Sarah, where's your husband now?" Do you know the truth behind those?
I feel like I do, but I can't remember right now. So
obviously, in the storyline, it's revealed that that's DDP speaking, obviously with his voice disguised and deepened. It's the Undertaker. Where are the dogs now?
You know what?
You know where I'm going. So for those of you who don't know, the person who's actually doing that voice, and they only found this out recently where they reversed the effect, it's Vince McMahon. And when you hear it, it's so obviously him. And it's like, "Hey, Sarah, where's your dogs? Where's Undertaker now? I don't like that, Sarah. You're ignoring me." And it's so horrible to listen to as Vince McMahon, but it's him. And it's just so typical. Like, I'll do it myself, Vince McMahon. They wouldn't even get Paige to do it. Vince McMahon has to do the whole thing.
I don't know what it was about that story that I liked. I guess it's just because Undertaker was my favourite, and the fact that he just comes out and literally mauls Paige, and like he comes out and almost like the whole song of Rollin' plays because he takes so long to come to the ring, and like he puts his gloves on his hands because he's going to break his knuckles because he's going to punch him so much. I just thought that was so cool. I love that moment. And then of course the main event, as you say, is quite a bit of a dud, but the story of it is that there's rumours that either Benoit or Jericho is going to move to WCW. We don't know which one it's going to be. So the plot of the story and the match is like, who's it going to be? Who's going to turn on WWF? So that kind of distracts you from the actual match, I think. But it's a really good match, I think, a really good show. Again, more 2001, I've got Invasion and I've got Survivor Series 01, both on my list.
Nice one. I didn't put a Survivor Series in because I only saw it for the first time recently. But Invasion is there. Invasion is one that I had on video, and it was one of the most successful pay-per-views that they ever ran. And, I think we've mentioned this before. People really put a lot of shade on the Invasion storyline. But having watched it now in context, it's it's refreshing for WWF programming at the time. And for me as a wee boy at the time, I didn't watch WCW, so I didn't realize that I was missing out on, like, obviously I knew about Hogan and Sting and Goldberg, but I didn't need 100%. To see them. I didn't need them there. I was just all consumed by WWF at the point, so they could literally have, given me a turd and polished it, and I would have loved it.
As far as I was concerned,
the Invasion is really good.
Booker T, DDP, Mike Awesome, Lance Storm. As much as, when they were telling me those guys were dangerous and they were the main guys, so I believed it,
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I? Just a naive kid.
Also, one of my favorite stages of all time.
That was my next point. Really? I remember thinking it was so cool having one, ramp for WWE and one ramp for the Alliance. And actually, so my house, right? So we've got the driveway at the front. And we've got this sort of like pathway that goes to kind of like the back garden. And I remember when that was getting built in like 2005 or 6 or something, I remember thinking, oh, cool, this looks like the Invasion stage, because it's like a wee sort of path that comes off from the right. So I would do like entrances from one side, and then I would go into another character, and I would just come out my front door and be like the other side, and be like the Alliance. And there's actually like a path next to a park next to my old school. And when I used to walk home from school, I would walk down this path, and like it was the exact same. Like there was 2 sort of pathways with grass in the middle, which always reminded me of Invasion. So it's like these wee things that kind of stay with you,
It's and it's also just a good show. Like the crowd are so into it. You don't get any impression from the crowd that they're disappointed in what they're seeing in terms of the presentation of WCW and ECW. I love the inaugural brawl. I love the tag match that opens it up. I love the referees match. It's fun, and the crowd are really into it. So much fun. Errol Hebner and Nick Patrick are so over, and that's what makes it fun to watch.
Are you aware of? Sorry, go on.
I was just going to mention Jeff and RVD as well.
Well, that's the main. Obviously, that's the match of the night. But are you aware of the Nick Patrick like bump that he always used to take?
No.
So in every Nick Patrick match in that year, when he was like the main event or the referee for the main event, he would always take a bump. Like it would always be like referee going down because there's going to be some sort of tomfoolery or something. Go watch like as soon as this podcast is over, any Nick Patrick moment ever, and just watch him being punched. He does the same bump every single time, where it could be a slap, a chop, a super kick, a power slam, a punch. What he would do is he would do that kind of like I don't know if it's like Street Fighter when your character dies, where you kind of launch yourself backwards with like your bum sticking out the way, and he's like launching his arms up in the air. And it's like a comedy bump. I don't understand why no one took him aside and went, you need to make it look realistic. Because Austin would punch him and Patrick would just fly out the ring or whatever with his arms in the air. It looked so uncoordinated, a bit like Vince. But like it just looked funny because he would take this bump as if he was just getting like what's it called in Dragon Ball Z, where he'd go Kamehameha, like but like sending Nick Patrick far away. I don't know. I just thought every single Nick Patrick match, I'm like, please do a bump, please take a bump, please take a bump.
Do you know what I love about that match is how serious the referees are taking it. Like Nick Patrick and Errol Hebner, they over. Put your own damn shirts in your own damn side.
Anyway, RVD and Jeff, brilliant.
Absolutely. It was one of the last times the hardcore title really seemed to mean something, was when those guys went back and forth.
I prefer it to the ladder match.
Yeah, you said that recently, and this is the first one that I fell in love with. Absolutely,
yeah.
I was always kind of bummed that Jeff didn't do anything with the pit, like in between the two entrances in that match. I always thought that would have been a go-to for Jeff. He nearly fell in it, or maybe I think that was Trish and Lita that nearly fell in it.
No, he took the bump into. Remember, he gets the Van Daminator and he falls into the pit. Yeah.
Oh, no, there we go. I'm talking out of places I shouldn't be, Chris. So clearly, I'm not fit to be on this podcast, and maybe it's because I've badly hurt my ankle. My next one historically is Judgment Day 2002.
Okay, I don't have it on my list, but go for it.
Love it because I had it on video. I wore it thin. Being called WWE was a huge novelty at the time. I love so much about the show. The hair versus hair match, Edge and Angle, the Hell in a Cell match with Chris Jericho and Triple H, even Hogan and Taker in a main event in 2002 is strangely compelling. Yeah. The fact that the Dudley Boys crossed paths for the first time after the brand split in the Divas match in this is really fun for me as well. Rikishi and Rico winning the tag team titles from Billy and Chuck always got me as well. The whole thing with Booker T going to a hotel room and being an elaborate ruse by Goldust, who ends up sneaking into bed with him to get him to leave the NWO. And it's Austin's last pay-per-view match for a long time as well. Austin versus Big Show and Flair. So it was just one of those sentimental favorites. I loved it, and had that great "The End Is Near" theme, which they are now using again in NXT. Have you seen this for Killer Cross?
What? No, they're not.
Dude, have you been watching NXT?
Yeah, that's not his song, is it?
The song that's played on the... So, if I'm thinking for when this goes out, so the episode of NXT before the episode with the cage match between... 2 episodes before the cage match between...
Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher.
Yeah, so 2 weeks before that, there's a Killer Cross, Karrion Cross promo, and the song that's playing is "The End Is Near."
Really? Because I loved his entrance with like Scarlett singing the song and stuff. I thought that was really cool, but I didn't know it was that song.
I don't know if that's the song, but that's the song they're using in the video packages.
Like in the promos, right? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Nice. So, I remember they used it. They did a takeover in 2016 called "The End," and they used that song as the theme song, and I marked out for it.
Mate, on the subject of 2002, I think, do we both have SummerSlam 02?
We do. I want to talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
You talk about theme songs, right? So the theme song for that show is called "Fight" by Jim Johnson. Yep. And there's a promo package for the Shawn Michaels and Triple H match, which is one of my favourite matches of all time. I don't know if you call it a street fight or not. I don't know if I can call it my favourite street fight, but it's a definitely no DQ match. And the promo package to this match, it's almost like the song was written for the match, you know, talking about the history of Shawn and Triple H being together, and then the betrayal and the turning on him and that sort of thing, and then just the match ends up being great. I love Brock and Rock versus Brock. I love the opener. It's one of the most underrated and forgotten about openers of all time, Angle and Mysterio. But also this week, in my group chat with my mates, one of my mates put into the group chat, has RVD ever had a match without his ponytail in? I've never seen him without his ponytail. And I just, that kind of obscure knowledge that we both share here on the Wrestling Connection. I just went, top of my head, I went, SummerSlam 2002 against Chris Benoit. He goes into the crossface and he's, in the crossface so much, his ponytail comes out, and when he wins the match, his hair's long. And I remember being a kid and not believing how long his hair was. And it's not particularly long, but it's just because it's like you're so not used to seeing it,
Yeah, it's so unusual.
I love the stuff with Howard Finkel as well on this show, with Lillian Garcia and Trish Stratus. Loads of good stuff on this show. It's so underrated. Taker and Test, I think, is a lot of fun.
I'm just watching the build up to this show right now, and I'm getting really excited to seeing it again. And obviously there's a real turning point with The Rock and Brock in the main event as well. And what a great opener with Angle and Mysterio too, as far as I can recall. And I'm looking forward to revisiting it. I have a slightly, I don't know if it's obscure, but I have one more show from 2002 I've got 2 actually. So one of them is quite obvious, and that's Survivor Series. I'm sure you might have that as well. But I want to pause for a second and appreciate No Mercy 2002. I love this show so much.
Okay.
It was the first wrestling DVD I had. First of all, I also had probably my favorite wrestling pay-per-view theme song ever. It's another Jim Johnson song, and it's called No Mercy, and it's a belter. Etc. It's a great theme song. Listen to the Mark Henry theme and then listen to that for a wonderful contrast. No Mercy. That has probably one of the best Hell in a Cell matches of all time, with Brock and Undertaker in the main event. A hell of a lot of blood loss. It's brutal. It's quite seminal in a sense because it has 2 women's matches on the card. I think Trish and Victoria, maybe Trish and Jazz, and then the blow off for the Dawn Marie Tori Wilson match as well. And that was a big deal because it was probably the first time there was more than one women's match when neither was like a sexualized kind of objectified thing. It wasn't like a swimsuit match or like a wet t-shirt thing. It was just two women's wrestling matches like you would expect to see today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, really fun storyline as well. We kind of talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's such a fun storyline. And I don't know, Tori Wilson's always been like, I've got a soft spot for Tori Wilson just because she was always like the constant when I was younger. She was always on the show, and then in later years, I've been a fan of like Al Wilson and appreciating his contributions to the show.
Yeah.
I've also been a big Dawn Marie fan. This is the second time I want to do a Dawn Marie appreciation speech. That's it. That's all
I thought you were going to go into the speech. But yeah, I love No Mercy 2002. It's also got a phenomenal tag match.
Yeah.
It's the finals for the SmackDown tag titles.
So good.
Benoit Angle versus Edge and Mysterio. Really, just fantastic. It opens up with a tag match: Chris Jericho and Christian versus Booker T and Goldust, where the rope breaks.
Is that the one with the rope break? Yeah,
yeah. And they managed to hold it together, because it breaks when Jericho tries to do a springboard move. I don't know if it's the lion salt or not, but he tries to do a springboard and the rope goes, and the guy could have got really badly hurt. He just managed to save himself. A great match. It's kind of notorious because it's the conclusion of the Katie Vick angle in this show as well. But Kane was so over at that point. And it was the end of the Intercontinental title for about 7 or 8 months, this show.
What were they thinking?
I know. Daft. Absolutely daft.
I remember thinking that Kane was going to win the world title in this show.
Yeah, I thought there's no way they're getting rid of the Intercontinental title, so he's just going to hold both belts. But no, not only did Triple H absorb the Intercontinental title, the history books have kind of been tweaked, in the last few years to say that Triple H actually was the last IC champion of 2002 until 2003 when Christian would win it in the Battle Royal.
That's right. Judgment Day, I believe.
That's right.
So, do you want to talk about Survivor Series?
Debut of the Elimination Chamber. I also love this show, and I'm sure you're going to mention this as well, for Saliva. And
of course, yeah.
I love you, I hate you, I can't live without you. And they also played Jericho down with a very underrated version of his team, which I wish he'd used more often. I think he only ever used it that night, but it was on one of the CDs, and it was called King of My World or King of the World, which was fitting for Jericho at the time. It's the first chamber match. It's a great match, and people point to the fact that there's a kind of a botch with the order of entrance, and there's Shawn Michaels' look is a bit funny, but I think it's fantastic. It's brutal.
What was the botch with the order of entrance?
So I think it was Kane and Booker T were the wrong way round. It was something like that. It wasn't too damaging, but I think it doesn't tarnish the match as far as I'm concerned.
I never knew that.
Yeah. The one of the lights went off the wrong way, I think. I think, or maybe it was to do with Shawn, but I don't know. But I think they had to think on their feet for quite a bit. But the two of the entrants came out in the wrong way because the lighting was botched, or like they went into the wrong pod, and they'd already established the sequence of the lighting. It was something like that. But I just thought it was a great show. The women's hardcore match. I mean,
so good.
Victoria and Trish, just a great match, and really, I think, significant in the history of women's wrestling. This was when the to be a diva was starting to become more of a deep term in wrestling. It wasn't just the salacious content that really with Trish and Dawn Marie and Victoria that you started to see them really giving these women a chance and to show what they could do, and this is a great example of that.
I had this on video when I was younger, and it's one of those ones where I would watch over and over again. So sometimes you would get to the point where you'd watch a show so much you'd only maybe see the first couple of matches because you'd either get bored or it was nighttime, you had to go to sleep or something like that. Yeah. So I remember watching the opener, the tables match with 3-minute warning, and the Dudley Boys and Jeff Hardy in this 6-man elimination tables match, which I loved it because they had to put everyone through a table to be eliminated. It wasn't like this one person goes through, that's it, Everybody had to go through the table, and the match is insane. Jamal, who later on went to be Umaga, does this splash off the top rope to the floor and just kills Jeff Hardy through this table. It's such a good match, and I remember watching that match so much because that's the first match on the show. And then, of course, the women's hardcore match. I love the 3-team tag match. I love Lesnar and Big Show having like a 5-minute, just these two massive guys just killing each other, like suplexing each other. Couldn't believe it. And then, of course, the main event of being the first Elimination Chamber. What I like the most about that match, not to mention the unbelievable reaction at the end when Shawn wins, but JR and King not knowing what to expect. And it's one of the few times where it's not seemed so, like JR and King can make anything seem so flawless, right?
Yeah.
I can like they might not even know the finish. They might not know what's going to happen. Like for example, Taker and Mankind at King of the Ring. Like obviously they didn't know the extent of that, and they make it feel so real. That's another example of it. Them reacting on the fly. Like, what are we going to see? We're kind of witnessing this with you. We don't know who's coming out next, and we don't even know how it's going to come off. I love that, hearing them kind of work on the toes a bit. Not to mention Van Damme doing the frog splash to the top of the pod and landing on Triple H's throat and nearly killing him. So it's just a great show. And I think since we're still so far down our list, I propose a part 2.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's. I have no idea how long we've been chatting for, but I haven't even dented my list.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So let's maybe call it a day there, and then we'll pick it back up.
Well, fantastic. We should really then say thank you to everyone, and I'll let you close the door on this podcast whilst I raise my ankle further, Chris. I just want to extend my thanks to Mick Foley again, and to Gravity for hurting my ankle, but my biggest thanks before you close the doors on this completely, Chris, goes to Mark Henry, and for whoever the fantastic vocalist or indeed vocalists were on that incredible 2002 Mark Henry theme. Woo woo, yeah.
I wonder where they are now. I wonder if they're still like making money off being singers.
I demand a reunion.
Yeah. On the show. Yes, I don't want to close the door too far because we're going to come back to this. Both Glenn and I have about half of our list still to go. We could keep going on, but it would take another hour or so. So we'll leave it for another episode. We're happy to go back to this one because it's such an easy topic to talk about. Big thank you to Mick Foley again. It's still surreal saying that, the fact Mick Foley introduced the show. That's so cool. So big thanks to Mick. Thanks to Kate, of course, for the jingles. Thanks to Jamie for the artwork. And thanks to you for risking your life. The fact you may have some sort of blood clot in your ankle, but you're still here, able to do the show.
Still here. It feels pretty damn good. Maybe I'm going to be like Bob Orton and just wear a cast for the rest of my life. That's a possibility. I kind of like the sound of that.
How's it feeling? Is it still dead sore?
It's actually fine now. I think I just like tweak. You know that way you can tweak it sometimes, and it's buggered for a short amount of time. But I'd like to over dramatize it, so I think I may die.
Okay, this is the last episode of Glenn on the show. Auditions for the next co-host start tomorrow.
And when you listen to the Mark Henry theme at the end of this show, the screaming is the sound that I'll be making as I try and walk out of this room.
Yes. Also, we'll give a shout out to Scott and Jay for their reviews of the show. If you would like to be cool and sound like Scott and Jay, please join them in leaving a review on the iTunes page. You can go to Apple Podcasts if that's the sort of outlet that you use to listen to the show. You can leave us a 5-star rating if you'd like, or a 4-star rating if we're not good enough for you. And you can also rate us a review, because the more reviews and the more ratings we get, that will help the show get more attraction. We'll get some more eyes and ears on the show, so the more reviews, the better. So please, if you get a spare 2 minutes, leave us a couple of words. Let us know what you think. It's also good for us to know, that you guys like the show and what you guys would like added to the show and that sort of thing. So please let us know any feedback you have on there. And you want to give us a reminder of the match of the week, please, my friend?
We'll go with the main one, which was Brock Lesnar and Hulk Hogan on the August 8th, 2002 SmackDown. It's a big moment in the history of the business, folks. And if you only know Lesnar as being this suplex city machine that he is nowadays, go and watch this and you'll see what he was like back when he was in his early 20s.
Suplex City, bitch! And until next time, ladies and gents, you can get us on social media. It's at WrestleConnection on the Instagram, at WrestleConnect1 on the Twitter. It is facebook.com/The Wrestling Connection, and you can get us on YouTube by searching The Wrestling Connection Podcast. Give us a subscribe for exclusive content, individual moments from the episodes, and of course, full episodes in their entirety if you're a YouTube podcast listener. And until next time, folks, thanks very much for listening from Glenn and myself. We thank you very much for listening and for downloading. Tune in next week for some more wrestling chat, and we will leave you now with the most underrated theme song in the history of the business. This is Mark Henry, circa 2002.
Have a nice day.